Bill, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have the opportunity to share some expertise with our agriculture teacher candidates here at Penn State. Folks, this is Jill Casten. She's the Senior Director of Training and Education for the Kansas Farm Bureau. But before that, she was very actively involved with the National FFA organization as a staff member and, of course, as a student member, and has been involved in agriculture in many different ways and forms. She received her PhD in Agriculture and Extension Education at Virginia Tech in 2011. And while she was there, she had a chance to conduct some research and work in the Center for Peace Studies and Violence Prevention, which was an outcome of their tragic 2007 incident. And I think those experiences and that research and her background really has something to lend to you guys as candidates as we look at how can I be prepared for emergencies as an ag teacher. Jill, what advice do you want to share with them?
Well, I would say, based upon, I guess, my own personal experiences, I've never taught in the high school classroom. I'll put that out there, but I have taught, several college courses. And, as I looked at my research and researching, young people, I think on whether they be college students or high school students, we're facing kind of the same issues. And I guess first and foremost is the understanding and grip of reality that violence and threatening behavior cannot be completely prevented. You're going to be teaching in a high school. It's going to have educational resources, programs, policies, procedures, and first and foremost, you need to be familiar with those. But I think as an individual teacher, my advice and as an outcome of my research really is to focus in on this part that you can affect, which is building community and focusing your efforts on those peer groups and those students who are actually in your community, in your ag community, in your classrooms. And this is really more of a proactive in nature. A lot of times when we hear about violence, it's always very reactive. We don't talk about all the underlying behaviors and things that happen before something becomes threatening or an act of violence. And a lot of that happens, and you'll find, in the underlines of what goes on day to day in a high school. And I can guarantee you that there will be students who have concerns about other students, or even you as a teacher that may hear or witness things that may be of concern to you. And that's really when stepping in as a part of this community becomes a part of it. And Daniel, one of the pieces of this, community building piece is really just being the feeling of responsibility and a sense of accountability back to your community. And that means not just as a participant, but as a bystander. If I'm a student and I notice something concerning about someone else, or if I am concerned about another student or peer, it's being able to come forward to a trusted source like yourselves as teachers to be able to share that information and breaking this culture of I'm telling on my friend or I'm going to get them in trouble because I'm concerned. I think that's the biggest barrier, as I found in the research, that we need to overcome, is really creating this community so students have this empowerment to break the culture of silence, to be able to come forward with information so students can get the help that they need. I think that's what it really boils down to, is we want to get these students help. It's really not about punishment, it's not about anything along those lines, but really just getting that student of concern the help that they need.
Jill, as we talk about building community with your experience in school-based ag education, what are some suggestions or hints or low-hanging fruit that would be available as tools or strategies to an agri-science teacher to help with this community, help overcome that you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. I think it starts with, obviously you're going to have a role as a teacher, and that's very defined, and I think everyone's going to have different varying opinions on whether we're teachers and friends or teachers and mentors, or what that role is between the teacher and student. But I think the low-hanging fruit for me would be, as a teacher, is to just really create this transparent community, that it's okay to come forward. It's okay to talk to your teacher like a human, right? But still maintain that respect and that level of authority within that. And again, I'm not an expert on that. Daniel, I will leave that kind of piece for you. But I think having the conversations with students, you have to be purposeful. You can't just assume that students will know to come to you or even know what to look for. I think, I wish every school could openly have these conversations, but you as a teacher in your classroom can start that community. And it doesn't just have to be about violence, but it can be about the entire classroom as a community. And with that comes responsibility for our actions, responsibility as for others, being accountable for actions of ourselves and others. And so I think being purposeful and having that conversation, whether that's week 1 of the class and you're kind of setting your classroom standards of conduct or guidelines for participation, but with that comes this accountability and responsibility piece and an intentional building of a community within your classroom.
Sure, ownership, and then we're all citizens of this space. And I think that our ag teachers are uniquely positioned to be aware of the community because of the roles they play. So if a teacher's conducting supervised ag experience visits and has done that home visit, perhaps they have an understanding of what that home life is and which students may be more at risk. Right. So I think there's a lot of great things you shared with them about developing community and realizing that some of the positive, good teaching things we do are just good teaching and also help prevent some of these concerns and tragedies that we've seen. And so perhaps we can all work together to be proactive, as you put it, as opposed to reactive.
Yeah, and I think this just a general awareness as a teacher too, and you all are in this teaching profession because you care about students, and so you've already got a foot up on probably many others in that same situation, but kind of this overall awareness of where your students are coming from and understanding that it goes beyond just the classroom as well. So being on the lookout for things that just don't sit quite right with you. I mean, I had tons of conversations with RAs and people, and I specifically focus in on the residence life community, but they said, there's just sometimes what people will say or people do that just doesn't sit your gut on that, and be able to have that conversation, ask maybe why, and give that person maybe an outlet. So I think with that comes being a trusted and respected member of the community that can also provide any support or help that a troubled individual might need before it gets to any level of violence. So
if a student wanted to learn more because of all the work you do you have any suggestions of a resource they could Google or look? And if that's okay, because that was a surprise question.
Yeah, no, geez, for the secondary level, nothing's really coming to me. In fact, as I looked even back through some of my pieces, all of the resources are really around this idea of threat assessment. So it's kind of that next step in terms of what are the predictors, precursors to violence, and being able to, it's a lot more procedural, I guess, for like a college campus or university. And I think one of the things that and you all will be going into schools that are of varying sizes, right? So I went to a high school with 100 people. We pretty much knew what everyone was up to, and if anyone was up to something of no good or had any issues, pretty much the whole school knew about it within a matter of minutes. But that's not going to be the case for everybody. So I think also keeping in mind, the size and scope of your school and your program and your classes will also affect that in ways that you're which to build community, and how you might lean on others in the school to help you create that sense of community. So no, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's great stuff out there. Google is a wonderful machine.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jim.
Thank you, Daniel.